Well, I think this was meant to be a panel session for us to discuss some of the topics and issues that were raised today. I think Jenny said that drinks were going to be brought out, which I think is good in terms of the feel and the vibe of the session. Yeah, sure. So maybe it's a good time just to throw it out to the floor. Any questions, any thoughts, any ideas that were raised during the course of today for us to discuss.
I've got a question. So who thinks that you can't wear black shoes with navy? Is there anyone out there who wants to? My daughter's side, me. Anyone brave enough?
Christina. Is that black and navy?
Oh, okay, you know what? We're going to have a photo together. We are Mavericks. We are Mavericks. Who says? Why not? Thank you. Thanks, Tay.
We've got that question answered then.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any thoughts or ideas or questions for today?
What's the big thing that's going to happen in legal tech this year? What big change can we look forward to in legal tech in the next year or 18 months?
Oh, I don't know.
I get asked this question quite a bit actually, and my answer is informed by, do you know the Gartner hype curve? So everyone looks at that every year, right? It comes out every year and you see what technology is coming and what technology is being hyped and what technology is now off the hype curve and is really going to be applied seriously. And there's this great study that was done last year that showed that the Gartner hype curve has almost never identified a single technology that actually took off before it took off. And if you track the hype curve from year to year, there's really very little consistency. And I think that's a really good way of demonstrating that the tech world is not really good at identifying trends that will take off in the future. It's quite common that people are bad at doing that. I think what I'm more interested in, rather than predicting the future, is not that it's a bad question at all, but what I'm more interested in and what we're more interested in, at Joseph at least, is applying technologies that have been tried and tested to real problems. This is kind of a funny story, but we had an article come out about us in the AFR a couple of weeks ago, and one of our investors was quoted as calling us genuine dorks trying to solve a real problem. And she called before we saw the article and apologized profusely. And we said, no, it's good, we're going to run with it. And I think that's kind of it. You know, she said they don't want to be superstars or rock stars, they just want to solve a real problem. And I think that's what we're doing with our tech as well. And I think that's where the really interesting stuff is happening. The tech that exists and is tried and tested, that's where the cool stuff's going to happen. Yeah.
Can I just try to say from a law firm perspective, I think the only thing that limits us are ourselves. When you go into a law firm, I think you can generally get a feel about where they are, what sort of tipping point they are, where their state of mind is. Are they open to new ideas, or anyone in the firm just saying, you know, it'd be really good if we had X, Y followed by Z, and then there is some sort of mechanism for following that through. And I think that's what I think we're going to see more and more of, people becoming more brave. Lawyers, they're not actually going to turn to technologists, but they're going to be working together with technologists to get things done. And there's lots of space for innovation, but we all have to make time. I think something that's really interested me that's happened that I think might influence it is that there is a trend, and by that I mean I've heard of two law firms that are doing this, that are giving people bill relief, budget relief, a number of days, a number of hours, and to spend that time on innovation. And to that I say, no, I think we're feeding into the challenges against innovation if we do that. Innovation and what's coming in the next 18 months, what could potentially be in the next 18 months, has to be at the forefront front of what we're doing every day now. So we've got to be encouraging everyone to be constantly thinking about that. Is there a better way to do this? Is there someone else who can help me do this? And I think that's what we're going to have to encourage first. The new breed of lawyers coming through, well, they just know it. They just know it and they get it. But we really need to sort of really breed that through our firms and really push that change, because I think we're at that tipping point.
Cool. I've got one. Yeah.
Wait to hit this one.
Well, let me answer it in the negative. What's not going to happen in the next year? I've been speaking at chatbot conferences for 3 years now. And each chatbot conference says, this is the year of chatbots. I don't think this is the year of chatbots. I build big chatbots. Like I built very expensive, very deep, very highly used big chatbot with Ailira. And I see people using chatbots and spend a lot of time on development. I think we're at least 3 to 7 years away from mass adoption. One of the problems is that as a chatbot, kind of taking a form, so chatbot is a mixture of decision tree. If the question 1, question 2, question 3. Legal forms have been around for 30 years. It's nothing new. Then you can have question answers. Then you can have integration with other services. And you can have have that as an answering service. People just aren't familiar enough with robots yet to go, this is my go-to thing. Now we do all of these things. Sometimes we have our type 2, like unstructured machine, unsupervised machine learning, and then we have our really cool NLP, and then we have the ability to switch over humans and the ability to generate documents and ask questions and ask unstructured questions and train on data that comes through, and all these really cool things. And ultimately, people we've actually had to dumb it down because people are used to something that's simple. They actually want to use buttons. It's not something they're familiar with. It's taking a number of years. And as people play with text more, it's a fantastic medium. The younger generation are right for chatting to robots. Older generations, like we have a law firm out where it's the world's most limited internet cafe. It's literally just a room with a computer in it. You just go to Ailira.com. There's nothing you can do in there that you can't do immediately outside the office. Nothing. You can sit there on your phone and chat to Ailira. But people like going into a physical space. People like having someone they can smile at. A person doesn't do anything other than, like an assistant doesn't do anything other than smile and say, here, sit there. Don't take money, it's nothing to sell. Just really crappy internet cafe. But people still want someone to be there, they need something there. So we're a long way from totally automating all sorts of things. As the younger generation spend all their time playing with phones, maybe it's 5 to 10 year thing. There's I think 10, 15 year stretch, we could have a chatbots pass the test. I mean, some lawyers are pretty robotic, it would be hard to imitate them. That's my singer for the day. That's not so I'd say what's going to happen in the next year? Lots of people building chatbots. It's really cool. Keep doing it. I encourage it. Great space. Move in there. It's not going to revolutionize the world this year. Maybe 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, and I'd just like to pick up on something you said there. I think everyone got really excited a few years ago about AI-enabled bots, and this is probably a good distinction to make for the audience. I feel like it's a very tech-enabled audience anyway, but let's go and make the distinction. So there's a number of different types of chatbots. There are AI-enabled chatbots, so chatbots that use machine learning. Then there are also rules-based chatbots. I think in the last few years, rules-based chatbots rely on if this, then that conditional logic. So you set out exactly what the chatbot is going to do in all situations, whereas a machine learning style chatbot makes decisions. It's a very simplistic, oversimplified explanations, but makes decisions based on a data set that it has learned from. I think over the last few years, everyone got very excited by AI-enabled bots, and I think you spoke to that really well. And there's been a few problems that have come out of that. They're the bots that get stuck on the loop and say, sorry, I didn't catch that. But they're the bots that people got really frustrated with. I think what's happened over the last year, though, has been quite exciting for me to watch, where people have said, exactly as you just said, you know, we dumbed down Ailira. Lots of people have started dumbing down their bots because they realize they don't actually need a super clever, you know, NL-enabled bot to achieve a certain task, even if that is a complex legal task. Instead, you can have what we call a dumb bot, which is what lawyers build on Joseph, which follows conditional logic to come to an outcome, which is the perfect type of technology for solving legal problems, because as lawyers we're all familiar with the idea of if this, then that conditional logic. And sort of going back to the original question, I know we've riffed off this question for quite a while now, but another cool piece I read earlier this year was talking about the history of AI and the law, and the bots that are being built today, and lots of the really cool things that we read about today, use this more of if this then that logic. But the first time that an expert system, that's what we call an expert system, was built in the legal space was in the 1950s in America. So this stuff has been around for a really, really, really long time. And I think Christina made the point really well that now is really the time to capitalize on the stuff that has been around for decades, and to do it well, to see it through to the end as well.
I just wanted to mention, you know, and I really think as well, it's about the application. If you're going to try and boil the ocean, you're going to fail, and fail really fast. It's about, you know, choosing what it is that you're trying to do, and maybe technology, you know, looking for those sort of opportunities for now that will actually assist lawyers in becoming more efficient. You know, we're not trying to replace lawyers. In anything that we do, we're trying to make their life easier and remove the, you know, the pain of the mundane. That's what we call it, the work that they don't want to do, the work that we don't want them to be doing. It's not the high value work. I think the next 18 months, I think we're going to be getting better and better at doing that. And that's what I think. The lawyer's toolkit is going to begin to expand. How it's going to expand, I think that's up to us. I really do, because we are, well, I'm generalising here, but we are the people that stand between, you know, the lawyers and technology. We're the ones that are going to be giving them the advice on what they need to use, or encouraging them. You know, Joseph is an incredibly great platform to give to people to say, have a look at it, go and have a play, see what you come out with. You know, sandbox things, try things. Lawyers, we are perfectionists. I can say that because I am a lawyer. It's okay to fail. Some of the best successes that I've had in my career have come out of a number of fails. But the problem is we don't learn from our failures, or don't see them as a failure and see them as a learning experience. And that's going to determine the next 18 months. So I would encourage you to go back to work, do something differently. Don't think outside the box. Pretend the box isn't even now. Let's see where that takes us in the next 18 months. It's just dangerous to leave it in one way.
So let's then.
Hi, I've just got a quick question that picks up on Sam's comment of having smart bots and having to make them dumb bots, essentially. Do you think there's still too much emphasis of law firms looking at a new technology and then using that to drive their innovation agenda, as opposed to setting their innovation agenda and trying to drive the development of the technology that's most relevant to them?
Great question. I think we actually spoke at a conference, it was last year in Sydney, which was a CLC conference, and this question was raised. And a friend of ours, Jodie Baker, who runs Zakia, was speaking on the stage, And another person on the panel made the point that, innovation is not about tech, innovation is about processes and systems and whatever else. And he was right in some senses to that. Of course, tech does not equal innovation. But Jodie Baker's response has sort of stuck with me. And she said, of course, tech doesn't equal innovation, but tech is the tool by which we will achieve the things we want to achieve through innovative processes. And it's the quickest and best way, often, to achieve those things. That's very roundabout response to your question. But I think there's always a few moving pieces, right? I don't think it's always just that the tech comes after having identified the pain point or the problem that you want to solve. I think there really is value as well for the people whose job is to identify those pain points and problems, to be aware of the technologies that exist and what those technologies can do and the effort that would be required in order to implement those technologies. And from the processes that I've been a part of and that I've observed in law firms and legal organisations and elsewhere, when the lawyers or professionals who work with lawyers are aware of the technological solutions, they find that initial process a little bit easier. So I completely agree with your statement. Yeah, I think you need to look at what's a real pain point, what's a real problem, but to have that background knowledge, I've seen that to be really helpful as well. But thanks.
I think the difference between technology and the technology solution is the difference between a magic box of paints that I can paint something and it comes to life, and actually like a coloring book where you go just coloring. So take machine learning. We talked before about things that have taken some time. Machine learning was developed like entirely in the 80s, and it's just now it's come to the fore because we apply it to data and faster computers. So machine learning is a magic box of paints. What can you do with it? Probably all sorts of crazy stuff. And it's a magic box of paints, you can create anything out of it. Now then you say, cool, let's have a hackathon with this magic box of paints, paint something. I'll tell you what, I have no artistic talent. I cannot paint at all. I can't even draw things that I recognize as an object. So you give a bunch of lawyers, here's a magic box of paints, paint something out of it, like, I don't know. But what you should do as a technologist, you should say, here's an application of what you do. Like, so I have a really cool research NLP algorithm. It's what I've used to help Ailira pass the Adelaide University tax law exam. Be a paralegal in ABC's IRS, and we use it in our technology. But I say, here is like NLP algorithm is the basis of all things that are to do with law, because all we have is words, because we know the numbers. Maybe my friends are. But as lawyers, we do law because we suck at maths. And everything we generate is words. So anything we do in the legal technology space has to be based on like understanding words. So now we start with that, and I say, well, now what can you do with this? It's like, well, cool, you can use this to like analyze a contract and understand what it says. You can read through all of your precedents and just find one that's relevant, or find the case that answers your particular point, your particular paragraph in a matter of seconds. That's really helpful. But if I told you, here's a magic, here's what machine learning means, you can go, I don't know. So I think it's important that you say, here are some tools, here's what we've built. Now, you just take it that last 5%. I can build a chatbot that talks to, that does something really cool for you and incorporates all those pieces of technology. This is what it looks like. You take your technology, you take your knowledge. I'm going to show you what it's supposed to look like. And so all you're doing is you're coloring by the numbers. That's what I would suggest.
Do you know, I just want to say that I am so glad I wore these shoes today, because you all realise how short I am. With the two tallest presenters, thanks, Jenny, George, yeah, thanks for that. I think that's, because that's why I just totally ignored the casual comment, totally, so I'm really glad that, can we just point that out. Look, I agree with everything you say. I think it's really important that we identify and we equip our lawyers. But the thing is that it's people, process, technology. That's what we're going to look at. And I think it's probably got to be in that order. When someone comes to you and they say to you, if they say something, or we want, give me a list of all the technology we've got, or we want blah, we want yes, we want A, we want B, we want Z, we want triple Z, that's fine. Why is the question? Why do you want it? Why do you want a list? Tell me what you're trying to do. And it's almost those sort of collaborations that really lead to gold, and we've got to be more, we've got to create the champions in the business who are going to actually come to us, you know, but we're also going to be prepared, have to be prepared to have those conversations and to understand what we have, or lead them even to the right person. You know, I've got my own view on bots and the future of, you know, technology per se, but I think we're in the driver's seat here. We are. And it's just about our appetite. You know, our pace of change has been really, really slow. But I think there are going to be incredible people that continue to come out of our profession, like Sam. It's been such a highlight to work with you, Sam. But, you know, who inspire, you know, they can see something. And then it's about us enabling that and bringing it to the firm in the most appropriate ways and in the most appropriate form to give them a taste of what it can do. And then they will connect the dots.
Next question. All right. I'm going to pose a question to you guys. So we'll say that we hear constantly that technology is going to create new jobs. 100 years ago, we all 80% of the population worked in agriculture, and now we've joined. And none of us are upset that we don't have to pull plows all day. We're happy working in our offices. Now, before 10 years ago, I couldn't imagine that the chatbot designer would be a thing for the future. 2 years ago, last year, my 8-year-old son built a chatbot on IBM Watson and was featured at IBM Think up here in Sydney. And it's all very clever bots. You can chat with it now and message it. But we wouldn't think that the job of the future might be a chatbot designer. In the legal space, what do you think the jobs of the future are? Besides chatbot designer.
I think you've got one, don't you, Christine?
Me?
Yeah, the job of...
A legal maverick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that for the audience or for the panel?
No, it's for you guys. Yeah, for you guys, yeah.
Senior legal maverick, being a legal advocate. The jobs of the future, there are so many. You know, legal operations is a field in itself that's it's come out in the last 18 months. But for me as a lawyer, it's the first time that I finally feel that I'm wearing the right hat. I've got such a mixed bag of experience and expertise that I'm finally wearing the right hat. But yeah, there's plenty, I think there's going to be more and more growth in these types of areas. A lot more invested into, you know, the AI analyst, people who work alongside the legal teams. I wish I was a tech lawyer, but I'm not. I can see the opportunities. I think we need more of those roles that are somewhere between where technology sits and where technology evolves, and where that classic, you know, law sits. We need more of those. If that's legal ops, yeah, let it be legal ops. Legal ops analysts, you know, legal operations managers, all that sort of stuff. Yes, I think that's an incredibly evolving field. I have more work than I can handle. But I think there are many other jobs that, you know, Richard Sussman said the legal engineer. I don't think we've seen that, but I think maybe legal operations might be that type of engineer. Who knows? The sky's the limit. It's really hard. It's so hard. It's just always changing.
Am I jumping quickly?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Christina's covered it off really well. I mean, there are lots of new jobs. in the legal industry already, and it's not just minor jobs. You know, there's not just a few tech nerds in the legal tech field. I was in Singapore last week, and I was speaking to the general counsel of HSBC based in Singapore, and he was saying that he was speaking to a friend who was a GC in the States, and I can't remember what category of companies it was, whether it was Fortune 500 or something like that, but they were saying that on average 20 to 25% of in-house teams personnel in the United States currently is comprised of legal ops people, which is huge, and nothing like the equivalent stats here in Australia, or at least to my knowledge. But I think even beyond the new jobs that will be created, what I think is really cool is watching how jobs that currently exist will change as well, which Christina was getting to earlier around, you know, lawyers' jobs are changing. I was a graduate lawyer in 2013 at a commercial firm in Australia, and I spent 8 months sitting in front of retail reviewing documents for litigation. And we heard this morning the e-discovery platform, M&A, whenever I heard about that, I was telling John earlier, I think that it's God's work to get grads off that kind of review, because it's pretty horrific. And I think that's another cool part that I've been spoken about as well. Like, it's not just new jobs, it's also the changing nature of existing jobs, which is exciting.
So no one wants to be locked in a dungeon doing discovery.
Surprise, surprise, yeah.
I remember when e-discovery was just paper leases, no ringtail. Not that I did it myself, but yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Ringtail.
Well, the good thing about automations is that they're the best things that robots are doing this drudging work. We're particularly handy about terms like artificial intelligence. We like to think that it's like HAL 9000 or C3PO or Terminator. Affirmative. And that's because the largest part of the human brain is built towards understanding other humans. And so when we look at the moon, we see a face. When we look at technology, we imagine anthropomorphize it as if it is acting like a human, because that's what we're best at understanding. But in fact, it doesn't act anything like that. What I look at as an example of stretched technology, where would be a great place for technology to be, is like R2-D2. So R2-D2 can repair the X-Wing, carry the Death Star plans across Tatooine, but ultimately is second fiddle to Luke Skywalker, who is the hero. Okay, so it's like a Roomba, like a fancy Roomba. It can do a task, do it really well, but ultimately we're in symbiosis. It's like Tony Stark's Iron Man suit. It takes Tony Stark from being like an ordinary human to being like Superman, but ultimately still requires Tony Stark. We have a symbiosis there. And so, because humans and technology are symbiotic. Without technology, 99.9% of humans would have to die. And without fire, without our genetically engineered plants that we've changed over tens of thousands of years, without our buildings, without our cars, without our houses, we simply can't move like animals. We rely on technology, we need it. We can't escape it. New technology scares us until it becomes familiar. We are symbiotic, and but the better technology becomes, the more it does boring things and moves us away from living in hand to mouth. So we don't want to be locked in a dungeon doing discovery or doing your 500 police reviews for the week. But what I think is left, there are certain things that humans will always be better at than machines. So empathy, machines are totally empathy. Morality, making moral judgments, contextual reasoning, lateral thinking, judgment, advocacy. These things I don't think a robot can do, and I have an extremely positive view of what we can create, and have invested a lot of time, effort, skin in the game in trying to create these things. But ultimately, it must be symbiosis, humans plus machines. And humans doing the things that we enjoy. We enjoy empathizing with people. We enjoy being creative. We enjoy being advocates. We enjoy contextual reasoning and considering morality. And so I see a very positive future where we cut away that kind of ringtail drudgery and get R2-D2 to do it instead.
He was a short one, right?
Yeah.
And I just, I was going to say, I'm just so glad you said that Iron Man analogy, because my kids, like, I'm so embarrassing, that's the stage I'm at. So I'm going to say, do you know what I do every day? I am like Tony Stark, and I am the one, like, I am just a mother, but when I go to work, I put on Iron Man, and I make all our lawyers Iron Men and women. Thanks for that.
And if you've watched Endgame, there's Iron Man.
Oh, that's Captain Marvel. No, you can't spoil it. There's no hashtags in there.
My question was, so we've heard a bit about sort of some of the stereotypes in lawyers in the legal industry. What's a stereotype about either the industry or about lawyers themselves that you believe to be true, and also what's one that you think is completely false?
You're in big trouble, Jeremy. I think, hang on, you always answer these ones so well and so diplomatically. No, I think you need to take this one, because I'm a lawyer, I can't answer that one. So are you, but not really. You are. You go first.
Oh, okay.
You go first, you take it.
Something is true, lawyers are conservative. I think it's a good thing, but I think it's a bad thing. We need someone who's reliable, that's not going to take risks, that we can go to and ask for earnest advice and say, and the lawyer says, this is something stupid, don't do it. Something that's widely thought about that's incorrect is that lawyers are afraid of change. I don't think they are. I think we're just there is conservatism, correct conservatism, and that there is a correct reaction to the risks. And so, if you wish lawyers to adapt to change and to undertake new things, you must change the system in which they correctly react to. So if you say, if you make a wrong legal decision, like if you enter into a blockchain startup and you get it wrong, you will lose your practicing certificate and entire livelihood. That there is a non-zero possibility of that happening. They likely avoid that risk. That's not being stupid. So when people at tech conferences say, lawyers need to be more innovative, it's like, well, maybe you're pulling the string and stopping them from being.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. There is that sort of, oh my gosh, lawyers are so change resistant. But I think to counter that, they're very logical too. And I think we've been trained to be risk averse. But if you present something to them that makes sense, and you do it in a very logical fashion, that's something that speaks to them each and every time. But they will look for proof. And I think you've just got to push the buttons and understand what their drivers are. And especially when you have certain, in every law firm, there are some people, some stakeholders are a little bit harder to come across. They think that parts of their practice are bespoke, and that therefore the technology cannot assist them in any way. And it's about challenging them and showing them in a way that speaks to them. Did you know that if I did this via X tool, I would save you 3 hours, or give you 3 hours back in your day? You could then still complete it, and you might spend that 3 hours doing more business development, going home 3 hours earlier, and speaking to them in that way. But I think it is a fallacy that they are change resistant. They aren't. But we've just got to show them what we can do in a more logical way, or in a way that speaks to them.
I would agree with both of those. I think the stereotype that I found to not be true is lawyers aren't creative. I think they are, and I think Chris isn't spot on. You need to create a space where they feel safe to do that. And the stereotype that I found to be true is an unwillingness to make themselves vulnerable, particularly intellectually. And so I think that comes across as risk averseness. I don't necessarily know if it is risk averseness as such, but I think the way that lawyers learn to be lawyers is always with reference to authority and precedence, and knowledge is a very particular thing, whereas as soon as you move outside of the legal industry, knowledge is quite different. You know, I have friends who are consultants, even at like EY and the Big Four, and the way that they talk about themselves as experts is so different to the way that we would as lawyers, because they have this confidence, and they know that knowledge isn't necessarily, that there is specific authority for this single proposition that is coming out by now. So yeah, I guess that would be my answer.
Can I talk more about systemic causes of conservatism? So if you're a lawyer and you're earning a reasonable salary, you have a mortgage to pay, and you have kids to put through private schools, and then someone says, why don't you do something innovative? Why don't you create your own startup? Okay, there is a huge opportunity cost. Why would you do that? Because you're likely to have an 80-90% probability of running a tech company and earning absolutely nothing for a number of years, potentially losing everything, and a very small chance of making an extreme amount of money. It's a terrible, rationally, why would you do this? And it's very difficult to create something in law unless you have knowledge of it. Like my friend here is, worked as a lawyer a number of years and then gone and said, now I've seen the problem and I'm going to jump out. I still work as a lawyer, and I see problems and go, let's build cool things to fix them. But you shouldn't say that a lawyer is acting irrationally because they say, I'm not going to change my risk profile. Why would you do that? So there's a lot of damage to innovation. Now, if you're already, I think people have this idea that law firms should magically become tech companies. It's like, I don't think so. Like, if you have we're looking at disruptive innovation. So Kodak had digital technology, digital photography technology back in the 90s, early 90s, before it happened. But here's the thing, if you are running a successful business, you have a responsibility to not bet everything on some harebrained, stupid idea. Let someone else do that. You can buy it off them, sure, like that's fine. That's how it works. But I don't think it's proper for people to say, oh, all lawyers should suddenly become risk takers. It's like, no, let people outside take that risk. There's a small number of people who are doing that. Let them do that, and then let that technology seep back into law firms. The idea that you're going to take a stable business which is successfully running and making profit and employing lots of people and say, now we're going to change the risk profile from one that keeps everyone employed and mortgage paid and to something that has a 90% chance of falling over and everyone losing everything. Well, it's ridiculous.
So I think we've given you a lot to think about. I think we should take a couple of moments just to thank Jenny, George and Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go out there and keep these networks alive. You've got a lot of people you can talk to. Keep talking. Be Mavericks.
Can I just quick round of applause for Adrian, Christina and Sam. Thank you so much. The drinks are being served, as we've all noticed. I think these guys are getting very, very thirsty up in front of you watching everyone else drink. I think obviously they're going to be around for a little bit, so please feel free to chat, discuss anything else. Graham, big round of applause. Thank you so much. Hardest job in the room, and you did so well. Again, thank you, Graham. Really appreciate it. To our event partners, Thomson Reuters and FTI Consulting, thank you again for being involved. Please stick around, have a few drinks. On the app, there is the survey on there. If you can please complete that, but we'll send an email reminder out as well tomorrow as well. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the day. Thank you.